There's a moment most men don't tell anyone about. Not their therapist, not their best friend, not the guy at the gym who asks how things are going. It happens at 3 a.m. The bedroom is dark. She's sleeping next to him and he's awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking a thought he's terrified to admit. I don't want this anymore. Not her necessarily. Not the kids. The kids he loves in a way that's cellular, biological, non-negotiable. It's something else. Something quieter. Something that whispers when he's alone in the car. Something that screams during moments he's supposed to be happy. Vacations, anniversaries, milestone moments, when he realizes he's not actually present, he's performing presence. And there's a difference between being there and being there. One is participation, the other is theater. By 40, a man has enough life experience to recognize patterns. The life he built according to the script, marriage, house, kids, stability, the whole narrative, it's suffocating him. Not dramatically, not all at once. It's the slow erasure of himself, brick by brick, until one day he looks in the mirror and doesn't recognize who's looking back. The man staring back is a stranger wearing his face. Here's what the world doesn't talk about. Most men over 40 who regret their marriage don't regret it because their wife is terrible. That's the easy explanation. That's the one that lets everyone off the hook. No, they regret it because they didn't understand what marriage actually demanded of them until it was too late. They were sold a fantasy, partnership, equality, two souls becoming one while remaining individual. What they got instead was a system designed to extract everything valuable from them. Their time, their energy, their freedom, their sense of self, and offer in return the hollow comfort of obligation. A trade where he gives and gives, and what comes back is permission to keep giving. By 40, this man has accumulated enough evidence to see it clearly. The pattern is unmistakable, and that clarity is devastating because clarity, once it arrives, is impossible to unsee. On the surface, his marriage looks normal. Fine even. He comes home. He engages with the family. He does his part. He's the guy who shows up. The reliable one. The one you can count on. The one who's learned how to be convenient. But look closer. Really look. Look at the way his shoulders tense when she enters a room. That moment where his whole body braces as if preparing for an invisible impact. Look at the precision of his movements. Everything calculated, nothing spontaneous, every action running through a checklist of acceptability. Look at the conversations that feel less like connection and more like transactions. Did you pick up the dry cleaning? What time is the dentist appointment? Why didn't you do the thing I mentioned last week? These aren't conversations, they're maintenance logs. Somewhere along the way, he's stopped being a partner. He's become infrastructure, the mechanism that keeps everything running. And mechanisms don't have feelings. They don't have dreams. They don't have needs. The trap happens so slowly, he doesn't notice it's happening. In the beginning, compromise feels noble. When she prefers the suburbs and he wanted the city, moving to the suburbs feels like love. When she wants to delay his business idea until after kids, postponing it feels like sacrifice. When she needs him to be more emotionally available, becoming less himself feels like growth. Each compromise feels isolated, reasonable, small, but they accumulate. By year 5, by year 10, by year 20, he's no longer making choices. He's following a script written by someone else's needs. And the terrifying part is how invisible the transition is. It just happens. Through 1,000 small surrenders. You see it in the man who stopped calling his friends because she made comments about how much time he spends away. In the one who gave up the hobby he was passionate about because it was too loud or took too much time from the family. In the guy who's learned to suppress his opinions, his frustrations, his desires, because expressing them creates conflict, and conflict creates tension, and tension makes the house feel unsafe. He's learned that his peace is a luxury, but her moods are non-negotiable. By 40, he's spent 20 years learning how to disappear. And that's the part that breaks him. The disappearance becomes so complete that he no longer knows who he is beneath the role. Strip away the husband, the provider, the father, the stable one, and there's... what? Nothing. Who is he when nobody needs anything from him? He doesn't know anymore. and that loss is more devastating than any betrayal. But here's where it gets darker. Here's the part men don't want to face, because facing it means admitting something unbearable. Most men think their marriage is failing because they're not trying hard enough. They think if they just work more, earn more, be more present, be more understanding, then things will improve. So they keep trying, keep adjusting, keep bending, when the real issue is something far more insidious. What they don't realize is that their effort was never the real problem. Their wife's complaints weren't about his behavior. They were about something far deeper, a fundamental mismatch between what marriage demands and what he's capable of giving. And the terrible truth is that there is no amount of giving that will ever be enough. The system isn't designed for his satisfaction. It's designed for his compliance. Here's what takes decades to understand. A man enters marriage believing in a fantasy of partnership. He thinks he's joining a team where both people are working toward shared goals. What he discovers too late is that marriage, as it's structured in the modern world, isn't a partnership. It's a power dynamic disguised as intimacy. And the power flows in one direction only. She controls the terms. She controls the emotional temperature of the house. She controls what's acceptable, what's not, what matters, what doesn't. If she's upset, the house is tense. If she's happy, everything is fine. His emotional state becomes irrelevant, except insofar as it serves hers. In the beginning, a man doesn't see this because he's operating on hope. Hope that this time will be different. Hope that he found the one person who actually gets him. So when she becomes withdrawn, he thinks it's temporary stress. When she becomes critical, he thinks it's legitimate feedback. When she becomes cold, he thinks he's done something wrong. What he doesn't realize is that she's already begun the slow process of relocating her heart. Not dramatically, not all at once, but gradually, over months and years. And he's still standing in the place where her love used to be, wondering when she'll come back. A man in his 40s recognizes this because he's watched it happen. The way she stopped initiating sex, not all at once, but gradually, until intimacy became a scheduled obligation, something she permits rather than desires. The way conversations became transactional, the way she stopped laughing at his jokes, not because they changed, but because she'd stopped finding him funny. The way she started keeping a mental ledger of his failures. She didn't cheat physically, not necessarily, but she cheated emotionally long before the physical betrayal, if it came. She withdrew, she withheld, she made him feel inadequate in ways that were subtle enough to be deniable, but devastating enough to reshape his entire sense of self-worth. Every criticism disguised as concern, every comparison to other men mentioned in passing, every sigh during conversations about his work, death by 1,000 cuts, all of them too small to point to individually. But together they bleed him out, and when he tried to address it, when he asked what's wrong, she said nothing or everything or you know what you did. Accusations vague enough that he spent years apologizing for crimes he didn't commit. And that uncertainty is the real weapon. It keeps him compliant. It keeps him trying. It keeps him from ever feeling like he's done enough because he was never given a target to aim for. That's the part that breaks a man's will to fight, not knowing what he actually did wrong. You see it in the guy who started sleeping in the guest room, not because she asked him to, but because his presence in bed created tension. In the one who goes to the gym at 5 a.m., not because he's passionate about fitness, but because it's the only time he has to himself. In the man who's taken on a second job, not because they need the money, but because staying home became unbearable. He's not leaving, he's hiding. And hiding within the marriage is the loneliest thing a man can do, because nobody sees it. To the outside world, he's still married, still committed, still playing the part, but inside, he's gone. He's emigrated to a place where she can't reach him, where her disapproval can't touch him, because she's already taken everything else. And by 40, a man has enough distance to see the full architecture of what happened. And the most devastating realization is this: she knew, not consciously necessarily. But on some level, she understood exactly what she was doing. She knew that asking him to sacrifice would make him feel needed. She knew that making him feel guilty about his ambitions would keep him compliant. She knew that withholding affection would make him try harder. She knew that keeping him just uncertain enough about whether she loved him would prevent him from ever truly relaxing. She knew all of this, and she used this knowledge, whether deliberately or instinctively, to maintain control. Not maliciously necessarily. Maybe she was just protecting herself. Maybe she was just trying to survive in a relationship that wasn't meeting her needs either. But the mechanism was still operating. The extraction was still happening. Here's the cruelest part. By the time he understands this, he's been so thoroughly erased that fighting back feels impossible. He has kids who depend on him. He has financial obligations. He has a reputation built on being the stable one, the reliable one, the good husband. Walking away would cost him everything. So he stays. Not out of love, out of a prison of his own making, constructed brick by brick, over 20 years of choosing obligation over freedom. And the prison is so well built that the bars are invisible. He can't point to any single moment where he sold his freedom. It was just a series of small negotiations, a series of tiny surrenders, and then one day, he realizes the door has been locked for years, and he never even saw it close. A man over 40 starts recognizing how the marriage operated like a slow-motion negotiation where he kept making concessions and she kept accepting them. Every compromise felt like proof of his love. Every sacrifice felt like evidence of his commitment. But what he was actually demonstrating was his willingness to erase himself. And the saddest part, the part that destroys him when he finally understands it, she mistook his erasure for weakness instead of recognizing it as the highest form of devotion. By 40, he's also watched enough marriages to see the pattern everywhere. The friend who's been divorced twice and still believes the problem was choosing the wrong woman. The colleague who comes home exhausted every night to a cold house. The way he hunches his shoulders as he walks through the door. Bracing for whatever mood he's about to encounter. The brother who's barely allowed to see his kids because his ex has weaponized custody. The father-in-law who's been slowly erased from his own family. Tolerated but never truly welcomed. And he recognizes himself in every single one of them. The devastating clarity hits him now. He didn't fail at marriage. Marriage is designed to fail men. It extracts his best years, his vital energy, his sense of self, and offers in return the privilege of paying for it all, while being blamed for not doing enough. The system is rigged. And the cruelest part is that nobody tells him that until he's already spent decades inside it. There's a neurological component to what happens in a marriage like this, when a man spends years constantly managing another person's emotions, constantly adjusting his behavior to avoid conflict, constantly operating in a state of low-level threat. His brain rewires itself. It's not metaphorical, it's actual, physical, chemical. His nervous system becomes calibrated to danger, not the obvious kind, the subtle kind, the danger of saying the wrong thing, the danger of wanting something for himself, the danger of being perceived as selfish. His body learns to interpret these social threats the same way it interprets physical threats, with a stress response. Over time, this chronic stress state becomes his baseline. He stops relaxing. He stops feeling safe. Even in moments that should be peaceful, a Sunday morning, time with his kids, sex with his wife, there's an undercurrent of tension. This stress response literally changes the structure of his brain. The amygdala becomes hyperactive, the prefrontal cortex becomes less active, he becomes reactive instead of reflective. He loses the capacity for joy that doesn't come from external validation. He becomes addicted to the temporary relief that comes from meeting her demands, which is another way of saying he's addicted to the absence of crisis. By 40, his brain has been restructured by decades of this dynamic. He's not just regretting his marriage, he's grieving the man he could have been. The man who could create things without questioning whether they were selfish. The man who could pursue ambitions without feeling guilty about them. The man who didn't spend his entire 30s in a state of nervous alert. And here's what's particularly brutal. When he finally says, "I'm not happy," or "I need something to change," she responds with shock. Because from her perspective, he was never promised happiness. He was promised commitment. He was promised loyalty. He was promised to put her needs first. And he did all those things. So what's the problem? The problem is that he's finally understanding that those promises were designed to destroy him. They were designed to ensure his compliance at the cost of his self. And the transaction was never fair. Not from the beginning. There's a moment when the accumulated evidence becomes irrefutable. It's not one event. It's the pattern. He looks at his marriage and sees it clearly for the first time. Not as a romance, not as a partnership, but as a system designed to extract his resources while giving him nothing in return except the obligation to keep giving. And then comes the question that changes everything. What have I sacrificed that I'll never get back? His 20s. His 30s, the version of himself that was free to dream, to build, to become something without running every decision through someone else's approval filter. The friendships that died because marriage demanded total devotion. The ambitions that were deferred because they were deemed threatening. Time. He sacrificed time, and time, once spent, is gone forever. There's no negotiating with the years you've already lived. By 40, a man realizes something that shatters him. He's been trading the irreplaceable for the temporary, trading his vitality for the illusion of security, trading his freedom for the privilege of paying for everything while being blamed for not doing enough. He's been investing in a currency that was never actually valuable, and the cruelest realization cuts deeper than all the rest. Even with all those sacrifices, even with all those years of trying, even with every compromise and concession, it was never going to be enough. Because the system wasn't designed for his satisfaction. It was designed for his compliance. The goalpost moves every time he reaches it. The standard increases every time he meets it. There is no finish line because completion would mean the end of his usefulness. Here's what men learn too late but never forget. Marriage promised him happiness, but what it actually delivered was a blueprint for his own erasure. It sold him on the idea that sacrifice equals love, that compromise equals commitment, that putting her needs first equals being a good man. It made him believe that self-destruction was the highest expression of devotion. But what it actually taught him was how to disappear while still technically being present. How to exist without actually living. A man over 40 who finally sees this doesn't just regret his marriage, he grieves. He grieves the opportunity cost. He grieves the version of himself that he had to kill to maintain the marriage. He grieves the freedom he'll never experience because he's locked into a financial and legal structure that makes leaving devastatingly expensive. And he grieves the man he could have been. The ambitious one, the passionate one, the one with dreams that extended beyond family obligations. Because that man is gone now. Not dead exactly, but so far buried beneath years of obligation that resurrecting him feels impossible. The regret isn't simple. It's not I picked the wrong woman. That's the easy version. That's the one that leaves room for hope. The hope that if you'd just chosen differently, everything would be fine. No, the real regret is deeper. It's I didn't understand what I was agreeing to, and by the time I figured it out, the exit was too expensive and the guilt was too heavy, and my kids' needs were too real. It's the regret of a man who made a choice based on incomplete information, and now finds himself unable to unmake that choice without destroying everything else in the process. It's a trap with no exit that doesn't come without a cost he's not willing to pay. But here's what happens when a man finally faces the full weight of this realization, when he stops pretending. When he admits to himself that this marriage, in its current form, is costing him something he can't replace. Himself, something shifts. It's not anger, though anger comes first. It's not bitterness, though bitterness visits for a while. What eventually emerges, if he's strong enough to walk through it, is clarity. Pure, unfiltered clarity. And clarity is a superpower. Because once a man understands the architecture of the trap, he can't be trapped by it anymore. He can see the mechanisms operating. He can recognize when he's being manipulated. He can distinguish between legitimate needs and emotional blackmail. He can finally say no without drowning in guilt. The man who emerges from genuine reckoning with this truth becomes inoculated against the fantasy that marriage represents. He can no longer be sold the idea that finding the right woman will fix everything, because he understands that it was never about the woman. It was about a system that required his erasure to function, and that understanding liberates him, not because he becomes incapable of love, not because he hardens himself against connection, but because he becomes incapable of surrendering himself to an illusion. He becomes clear about what he will and won't accept. He becomes protective of his own energy, in a way he was never allowed to be during marriage. And here's what this teaches him. Your life matters. Your peace matters. Your freedom matters. Not as secondary concerns to be indulged after everyone else is satisfied, not as luxuries to feel guilty about. They matter first. They matter most. A man over 40 who truly integrates this doesn't become selfish. He becomes honest. He stops performing the role of the dutiful husband and starts being the man underneath the role. He stops making decisions based on fear and guilt and starts making them based on what he actually wants. And once he tastes that, the simple act of choosing his own life, everything changes. Everything. The colors become brighter. The days feel longer. Moments of solitude become sacred instead of shameful. He recognizes now where his energy is being drained. He can see which relationships are extracting and which are nourishing. He can finally, for the first time in decades, make decisions based on what he wants instead of what he's supposed to want. He can say no without justifying himself. He can say yes to things that excite him without asking for permission. The regret doesn't disappear, but it transforms into something useful. A map, a warning, a protector against making the same mistake again. He looks at friends still trapped in marriages that drain them, and he doesn't pity them. He recognizes them. He sees the same slow erosion happening, the same compromises accumulating. He watches their shoulders hunch when they walk through the door. He hears the exhaustion in their voices when they talk about home. And he understands now what they're too entangled to see, that the price of staying is higher than the price of leaving, that the financial and emotional cost of endurance exceeds the cost of freedom. Here's the final truth that a man over 40 needs to hear. Your regret about your marriage isn't a sign of failure. It's a sign of awakening. It means you're finally honest with yourself. It means you're finally seeing clearly. It means you're finally valuing your own life. And that awakening, painful as it is necessary. If you're over 40 and you're feeling this, if you're recognizing these patterns, if you're understanding that what you thought was love was actually erasure, if you're waking up to the cost of your own compliance, you have a choice. You can stay. You can accept the regret as the price of stability, the cost of being a good man, the sacrifice required for fatherhood. You can white-knuckle your way through the remaining decades and convince yourself you made the right choice. Or you can do something harder. You can get honest. Get honest about what you actually want. Get honest about what the marriage is actually costing you, not just in money, but in the irreplaceable currency of your own life. Get honest about whether staying is protecting your kids or modeling for them that self-erasure is love. Get honest about whether you're doing this for them or because you're afraid of what comes after. You can't control her reaction. You can't control her narrative. You can't control how she'll portray this to your kids or your friends or herself, but you can control your own truth. And that's the only thing that actually matters. You can start small. Reclaim small pieces of your life. Set small boundaries. Say no to small things. Invest time in small dreams. And watch what happens when you stop disappearing. Watch how different everything feels when you're actually present in your own life instead of just watching it happen to someone else. The man you become when you stop surrendering yourself isn't a villain. He's not selfish, he's not broken, he's awake. And awakeness in a world that needs men to stay asleep, that profits from men's compliance and erasure, is its own kind of power. It's the most dangerous thing you can be. Your regret isn't a failure, it's a signal. It's your deepest self trying to tell you something important. Listen to it. Don't dismiss it. Don't rationalize it away. Don't tell yourself you're crazy for feeling it, because the life you regret losing isn't lost. It's just waiting. Waiting for you to be brave enough to reclaim it. Waiting in the morning when you could choose to do something for yourself instead of performing duties. Waiting in the decision to set a boundary instead of sacrificing another piece of yourself. Waiting in the moment you choose your own peace over her comfort. It's waiting, and it's not going anywhere. The question is, are you brave enough to go after it?